She proudly proclaimed, "He belongs to me," while pointing at the young human warrior. The floor was made of crystal metal that reflected the colors of thousands of species. Floating platforms hovered in perfect circles, each holding delegates from worlds across the galaxy. At the center of the hall stood one figure who did not belong. The young human warrior stood alone. He was smaller than most of the beings around him. No armor covered him now. His hands were bound with energy restraints, glowing softly around his wrists. His uniform was worn, marked with scars from battles no one in the room cared to understand. Yet he stood straight. His name was Ethan Hale, though few here bothered to remember it. To them, he was only the human. Humans were new to the stars, too new. Their species had barely reached interstellar travel when they stumbled into contested space. A misunderstanding had turned into conflict. A small one, the Coalition said, a necessary one. Now Ethan stood before the highest council in the galaxy, waiting for judgment. Above him, the judges spoke in voices layered with echoes and translations. "The human is accused of aggression," one judge said, its form shifting like liquid glass. "He resisted lawful capture," another added, metal limbs clicking together. "He defeated 3 trained soldiers," a third judge said with open disbelief. Murmurs spread across the hall. Some delegates laughed quietly, others looked annoyed. A few watched the human with interest. Ethan did not speak. He had been trained not to. Humans had learned early that silence could be stronger than words. The judges continued. "Humanity claims this warrior acted in defense," the lead judge said, "but evidence shows overwhelming force." That statement caused more laughter. Overwhelming force from a human. Ethan lowered his eyes slightly, not in shame, but in thought. He remembered the patrol, the ambush, how he had counted breaths instead of heartbeats, how he had moved when the enemy assumed he would freeze. They had never studied humans properly. The judge raised one glowing limb. "According to Coalition law, this human may be detained indefinitely or reassigned as labor under supervision." That was when the air changed. A heavy pressure rolled across the hall, like a storm arriving without warning. Conversation stopped. Laughter died instantly. From the far edge of the chamber, a tall figure stepped forward. She did not float like others. She walked. Each step echoed, even though the floor was designed to absorb sound. Her armor was dark, marked with symbols of countless campaigns. Her species was known across the galaxy, strategists, conquerors, leaders. Her name was Commander Velthara. Silence followed her like a shadow. The judges stiffened. "Commander," the lead judge said carefully. "This hearing," she raised one clawed hand, "is incomplete," Velthara said. Her voice was calm, controlled, and carried effortlessly across the massive hall. She stopped beside Ethan. Compared to her, he looked even smaller, yet he did not step back, he did not flinch. He met her gaze without fear. That alone caused a ripple of surprise. Velthara turned to the council. "You speak of force," she said, "yet you do not understand what you are judging." One judge shifted uneasily. "This is a human soldier, nothing more." Velthara laughed once. It was not a mocking sound, it was sharp. "Nothing more," she repeated. Then she did something no one expected. She extended her arm and pointed directly at Ethan. "He belongs to me." Gasps echoed across the chamber. Several delegates rose from their platforms. Some shouted protests. Others began rapid transmissions to their home worlds. The judges reacted instantly. "Commander, you cannot claim a prisoner." "He is not a prisoner," Velthara interrupted. Her eyes burned with quiet authority. "He is a warrior. And he stands under my protection." The hall erupted. Voices overlapped in dozens of languages. Accusations flew. Laws were cited. Threats were implied. Ethan remained silent. Inside, his thoughts moved quickly. This was not part of any human plan. He had never seen this commander before, yet something in her posture told him she knew exactly what she was doing. The lead judge struck the floor with a pulse of energy. "Order!" The noise slowly faded. "Commander Velthara," the judge said, "you are a respected leader. But you overstep. Why would you attach your honor to a human?" Velthara finally looked down at Ethan again. "He survived an encounter designed to eliminate him," she said. "He adapted faster than trained units. He showed restraint when victory allowed excess." She turned back to the judges. "You call that aggression, I call it discipline," one delegate hissed. "Humans are unstable, emotional." Velthara nodded. "Yes, and that is why they are dangerous only when mistreated." That statement caused new murmurs. Ethan felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Not pride, not fear, recognition. The judge narrowed its glowing eyes. "Even if what you say is true, Commander, claiming him as yours implies ownership." Vilthara's expression hardened. "Do not mistake my words," she said. "I do not own him." She placed her armored hand over her chest, then pointed again at Ethan. "I stake my name on him." The meaning hit the room like a shockwave. In coalition culture, staking one's name was no small thing. It meant responsibility, consequence, shared fate. Ethan finally spoke. "I didn't ask for this," he said quietly. The translation carried his words clearly. Vilthara smiled just slightly. "No," she replied, "you earned it." The judges exchanged silent communications. "This changes nothing," one said at last. "If he is truly worthy, let him prove it." Vilthara inclined her head. "Gladly," she looked at Ethan. "You will face trials," she said. "They will test your body, your mind, and your will." Ethan nodded once. "I'm ready." That simple answer caused another wave of whispers. The lead judge raised its voice. "Then it is decided. The human warrior will undergo coalition trials. Until then, he remains under Commander Vilthara's supervision." Energy restraints flickered, then vanished. Ethan flexed his hands slowly. For the first time since entering the hall, he felt free. Vilthara turned and began to walk away. "Stay close," she said without looking back. Ethan followed. As they moved through the hall, countless eyes watched them. Fear, curiosity, calculation. The galaxy had seen humans before. But now, for the first time, it was forced to truly look at one. And somewhere deep within the Coalition's perfect order, something began to crack. The corridors of the Coalition Hall were wide enough for 3 starships to pass side by side. Yet walking beside Commander Vilthara, Ethan felt smaller than ever. He did not complain. Humans had long learned that size meant little when strategy mattered more. Vilthara moved swiftly, her boots making no sound. She did not speak at first, letting the silence stretch. Ethan's mind replayed the trial in the central hall, the judges, the energy restraints, the unexpected declaration. He still did not fully understand why the commander had claimed him. Finally, Vilthara glanced at him. "You surprised them," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was a sharpness beneath it, like a blade hidden in silk. "I did what I had to," Ethan replied, keeping his tone even. "I didn't plan to be anyone's champion." "Few humans plan," she said, "but you learn to adapt. That is why you survive." Ethan looked at her. "Survive, yes, but I've never faced the coalition like this before." Vilthara smiled faintly. "Then you will learn." They turned a corner and entered a smaller chamber. Screens floated in midair, showing star maps, reports, and holographic images of battles. The walls pulsed softly with information streams. Here, commanders and strategists planned entire campaigns in real time. "This is where I monitor trials," Vilthara said. "You will face challenges, physical, mental, and strategic. Some are simple, some will test everything you know." Ethan studied the screens. Each scenario looked impossible. There were simulations of alien species, complex environments, and tactical problems that made even seasoned commanders pause. "Why me?" he asked. "Why not one of your soldiers?" Vilthara looked at him with sharp eyes. "Because no soldier from my ranks could adapt like you. You see patterns, you predict outcomes, you think differently than most beings in the galaxy." Ethan felt a flicker of pride but quickly suppressed it. He knew pride could be dangerous. Vilthara continued. "The galaxy underestimates humans. It is not arrogance, it is ignorance. And ignorance is dangerous." Ethan nodded slowly. He had felt that ignorance for most of his life. People assumed humans were weak, too young to survive in space, too fragile to matter, too small to fight. Yet humans had survived wars, famine, and environments no other species could endure. Survival had taught them creativity, endurance, and courage. "Your first trial is simple," Vilthara said, bringing him to a platform that shimmered like liquid silver. "You will navigate the obstacle field." The obstacle field was a training environment. It looked easy at first. Moving platforms, low walls, rotating beams. Yet Vilthara had intentionally loaded it with unexpected dangers. Holographic traps, sudden energy pulses, and shifting terrain tested every reflex and decision. "Observe," she said, stepping aside. Ethan took a deep breath. The air smelled faintly of ozone. He focused. Humans had learned to fight fear as much as they fought enemies. Every obstacle was a puzzle. Every trap was an opportunity to adapt. He moved. Platforms shifted beneath him. A beam swung suddenly and he ducked at the last moment. A holographic energy wall rose in front of him. He rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding it. Each action was precise, efficient, every step considered, every movement deliberate. Velthara watched without comment. She did not need to, she already knew what humans could do. What mattered was whether the coalition would see it. By the time Ethan reached the center of the field, some of the observers had begun murmuring. The movement was different, not fast in a flashy way, not powerful like the larger species, but clever, predictable in a way no one had expected. A metallic voice spoke from the observation deck. "This human is adapting, faster than expected," another voice hissed. "Impossible, humans cannot anticipate that many variables." Velthara's lips curved slightly. "Yet they do," she whispered. Ethan exhaled, the tension leaving his body. He had passed the first trial, simple, yet it set the tone for what was coming. He knew the challenges would become harder. After a short rest, Velthara led him to a new chamber. This one was darker. Walls were covered in strange symbols, alien diagrams, and holographic puzzles that rotated slowly in the air. "Your second trial," Velthara said. "Test your mind. You must solve these puzzles while under stress. Failure will slow you. The goal is not speed. The goal is understanding." Ethan studied the patterns. At first, they made no sense. Some symbols were mathematical, some psychological, others tactical. Every puzzle seemed to demand different thinking. Hours passed. Ethan focused relentlessly. He analyzed patterns, predicted outcomes, tried multiple approaches, and failed several times. Yet failure did not discourage him. Humans were trained to learn from mistakes, to turn error into advantage. Velthara observed silently, occasionally jotting notes on a floating screen. Finally, Ethan reached the last puzzle. His fingers moved swiftly, arranging symbols, adjusting sequences, predicting chain reactions. A soft click echoed. The puzzle disintegrated into lights signaling success. Velthara's gaze softened slightly. "You are faster than most expect. Humans learn in motion." Ethan felt fatigue creeping in, but he did not complain. Exhaustion had never been an enemy, it had been a teacher. Next, Velthara led him to the final trial for the day. This one combined both physical and mental challenges. A simulation showed a planetary system under attack. Civilians were trapped. Energy barriers, alien forces, and environmental hazards complicated every decision. "You must plan a rescue," Velthara said. "Your goal is to save as many lives as possible without direct orders. You decide strategy, you decide risk." Ethan's heart quickened. Humans were small in numbers, but their minds excelled at adaptation. He scanned the system, noted enemy patterns, and prioritized weak points. He coordinated holographic rescue teams, rerouted energy flows, and predicted enemy behavior. The simulation shifted constantly, testing him at every step, yet he remained calm. He made quick, logical decisions. Each choice saved more civilians and minimized risk. After several tense minutes, the simulation ended. Lights flashed. The system was stable. Civilians were safe. Only a few losses occurred, acceptable by galactic standards. Velthara finally spoke. "You have passed today's trials, not perfectly, but you have passed." Ethan exhaled, feeling a strange mix of relief and pride. "You see," Velthara continued, "humans are underestimated not because they are weak, but because they fight differently. They think differently, and when you combine that with courage, they are formidable." Ethan looked at her, trying to hide the small smile creeping onto his face. "I still don't understand why you chose me." She paused. "Because you remind me that strength is not only in size or weapons. It is in the mind, in courage, in the will to keep moving when the odds are against you." Ethan absorbed her words. It was not praise he sought. It was understanding. And for the first time, someone in the galaxy truly saw him, not just as a human, but as a warrior. Velthara led him back to the chambers where delegates observed. "Tomorrow," she said, "they will watch you again. Each trial is a test, not just for you, but for them. Let them see what humanity is capable of." Ethan nodded. He understood. This was bigger than him, bigger than one trial, one war, one human. The galaxy was learning a lesson. Humans survived because they adapted. Humans survived because they refused to surrender to expectation. Humans survived because they believed, even when others doubted. As the sun of the nearby star reflected off the tall windows, casting long shadows across the hall, Ethan allowed himself one thought. Maybe this is the moment when humans stop being underestimated. He looked at Velthara. She met his gaze, silent but approving, and together they prepared for the trials yet to come. The next day, the air in the coalition hall felt heavier. Ethan could sense it before he even stepped onto the platform. Delegates from dozens of worlds hovered above, watching closely. Their expressions were unreadable, or perhaps they thought so, but Ethan had learned long ago that observation could reveal much more than words ever would. Commander Velthara walked beside him, silent but vigilant. She had explained the first day's trials, but today's challenges were different. They were designed to push more than just the body or mind. They were designed to push willpower. "You will face 3 trials today," Velthara said, her voice low so only Ethan could hear. "The first is physical, the second mental, and the last combines both. Pay attention. Strategy matters as much as strength." Ethan nodded. Humans were not known for raw strength in the galaxy. Most species relied on size, natural armor, or energy weapons. Humans relied on ingenuity, adaptation, persistence. The first trial began immediately. The platform beneath Ethan shimmered and shifted into a dense terrain simulator. It resembled a rocky canyon world, with jagged cliffs, unstable ledges, and a river of glowing liquid cutting through the valley below. A loud metallic voice echoed from the observation deck. "This human has passed the first round. Let us see if he survives this one." Ethan took a deep breath. His boots touched the rough surface, and he immediately began analyzing the terrain. Most beings would charge, relying on their speed or strength, not him. He watched for patterns, how rocks shifted under pressure, how the wind altered trajectories, and how glowing liquid flowed in pulses. An alarm suddenly rang. Sections of the canyon began collapsing. Rocks fell from above, and energy barriers popped into existence along unstable ledges. Other species might panic. Ethan focused. He calculated timing, measured distances, and ran. Each movement was precise. Every step had meaning. Velthara observed silently, her hand resting near her weapon, not to intervene but ready if he truly failed. She had no doubts that he would survive the trial. The question was how fast he would learn. Ethan reached a narrow ledge. It wobbled dangerously. He felt the liquid below splash toward him. With a leap, he landed on a stable outcrop. A rock fell where he had stood moments ago. The trial ended after 10 minutes. A panel rose from the ground, signaling success. Ethan exhaled, his chest rising and falling quickly. Sweat dampened his uniform, but he felt satisfaction. Not pride, satisfaction. This was how humans measured progress, step by step. Next came the mental trial. The chamber shifted entirely. The walls became translucent screens displaying puzzles, tactical maps, and alien codes. Some were symbols from extinct civilizations, others were mathematical sequences impossible for a normal being to calculate in seconds. Velthara stepped back. "Solve them. There is no single correct path. Adapt, combine knowledge, and think faster than the simulation predicts." Ethan stared at the displays. His mind moved like water, flowing, analyzing, connecting. He rotated symbols in his imagination, ran simulations in his head, and tested outcomes before physically moving any piece. Minutes passed. Delegates whispered. Some sent messages to their home worlds. Most had expected him to fail. Humans, in their perception, were too slow, too inexperienced, too fragile. And yet the human adapted. One puzzle demanded coordination of multiple energy nodes to redirect a simulated planetary shield. Another required predicting enemy positions across 5 battlefields simultaneously. A third involved interpreting alien language sequences to unlock hidden doors in a virtual starship. Ethan solved them all. Slowly, methodically, but without hesitation. His mind moved faster than anyone expected, even faster than the simulation itself had calculated. Velthara allowed herself a small smile. "He learns in motion," she whispered. "Faster than any of them can predict." Finally, the last trial combined all aspects. Ethan was placed in a simulation that resembled a real battlefield. Civilians trapped in alien ruins. Hostile forces approaching from all directions. Environmental hazards that changed without warning. A metallic voice announced, "Your goal, evacuate civilians, neutralize threats, and survive. Decisions must be made in real time." Ethan surveyed the scenario. He identified weaknesses in the enemy lines, unstable terrain that could be used to his advantage, and possible escape routes for civilians. Humans did not rely solely on power, they relied on improvisation. He moved. He directed holographic rescue teams, maneuvered through unstable ruins, and used enemy attacks against themselves. A collapsing ceiling blocked a path. Ethan calculated the timing, pulled civilians aside, and triggered a controlled rockfall to slow enemies. Another challenge appeared, energy barriers forming rapidly in unpredictable patterns. Ethan paused for only a heartbeat, studied the pattern, and timed a leap. He landed safely on the other side, civilians following him with precision. Delegates murmured. They whispered across platforms. "Impossible," one said. "How does a human think so fast?" Another replied, "It is not strength, it is calculation." Velthara observed closely. She did not interfere. She let him lead, correct, adapt, and succeed on his own. Humans, she knew, earned respect through action, not commands. By the end of the simulation, all civilians were rescued. Most enemies were neutralized. Minimal losses occurred, far fewer than expected for beings unfamiliar with human tactics. The simulation paused, signaling completion. Ethan exhaled. His uniform was torn and dirtied, but his expression was calm. He had done what most believed humans could not. Velthara approached him. "You have passed not because you are fast or strong," she said, "but because you think, adapt, and persevere. That is what makes humans formidable." Ethan nodded. "It's not magic, it's observation, learning, and trying again if you fail." Velthara studied him. "Yes, and that is why the galaxy underestimates you. They look for strength in the wrong places." For the first time, Ethan allowed himself a small smile. Recognition, he realized, was rarer than victory. The galaxy often overlooked humans, assumed them fragile, and dismissed their potential. But Velthara saw differently. The observers remained quiet. Whispers spread slowly. Humans were no longer just insignificant beings. They were a variable no one could ignore. After a short rest, Velthara led Ethan to a quiet chamber overlooking the city outside. Twin suns reflected off the metallic towers, casting long shadows across the hall. "Tomorrow," she said, "the council will observe again. They will expect failure. They will doubt you. Remember, it is not enough to survive. You must make them see." Ethan looked out at the city, taking in the strange architecture and diverse beings moving below. The galaxy had not yet embraced humanity, but perhaps slowly it would learn. "I don't know if they will believe it," Ethan said quietly. Velthara smiled faintly. "They will. Humans always make others notice eventually. It is in their nature. When the odds are against them, they find a way." Ethan thought of his homeworld, of Earth, the small blue planet often overlooked by the larger galactic powers. Humans had survived countless disasters there. They had risen from adversity time and again. And now, here, in a hall filled with species who thought themselves superior, they would prove it again. As night fell across the city, Ethan felt a mixture of fatigue and determination. Each trial tested not just body and mind, but spirit. Each victory chipped away at the prejudices surrounding his species. Velthara watched him silently. She had claimed him publicly not as property, but as a statement. The galaxy needed to see that humans could not be dismissed. Ethan, by surviving and adapting, was already rewriting history. For Ethan, the thought was simple: survive, adapt, learn, and make them notice. And with that thought, he rested, knowing the next day would demand more than he had given today. The next morning, the hall buzzed with whispers louder than before. Ethan noticed it immediately. Delegates from dozens of worlds hovered on platforms, their attention no longer casual. There was tension in the air. The galaxy was beginning to take notice of a single human warrior. Commander Velthara walked beside him, silent but alert. She had claimed him publicly days ago, and now the ripple of that decision was spreading. The whispers were no longer just curiosity, they were caution. "Today," Velthara said softly, "they will test not just your skill, but your ability to respond to unexpected threats. Some will try to intimidate you, others to deceive. Pay attention. Trust only what you see and hear clearly." Ethan nodded. Humans had learned to rely on perception, logic, and instinct. Survival often depended on noticing the smallest detail others overlooked. The first trial began with a simulation of political maneuvering. Holographic delegates appeared around him, presenting conflicting orders and impossible demands. Civilians needed evacuation. Resources were limited. Alien soldiers acted unpredictably, sometimes blocking, sometimes attacking. Ethan studied the holograms. He noticed patterns others ignored: subtle gestures, timing of commands, inconsistencies in strategy. While others might have panicked, he planned. Using logic, he directed rescue teams efficiently, bypassed traps, and coordinated his units to save the maximum number of civilians. One of the holographic delegates attempted to block a path by issuing contradictory commands. Ethan paused, then carefully rerouted resources. The simulation adjusted instantly. He adapted. Velthara observed quietly. "Do not underestimate their ability to test you indirectly," she whispered. "The Coalition has many ways to challenge a warrior without open combat." By the end of the political simulation, every goal had been met. Civilians rescued, threats neutralized, and the holographic delegates left with simulated respect. The observers above were silent. They had not expected a human to manage so many variables simultaneously. Next came the physical trial, an obstacle course more dangerous than any before. This time, the terrain was a floating fortress, complete with moving walls, energy barriers, and patrolling security drones. Ethan had to reach the center without triggering alarms while avoiding detection or harm. He moved carefully. The energy barriers were timed. The walls shifted in patterns that seemed random but were predictable if observed closely. The drones had sensors tuned to react faster than a human's reflexes, but Ethan relied on observation and timing, slipping through gaps, ducking behind walls, and moving silently across unstable platforms. One drone spotted him briefly. Ethan held his breath, then ducked into a shadow as it passed. He adapted to the shifting environment, never panicking, always calculating. By the time he reached the center, the trial concluded successfully. Velthara allowed herself a small nod. "You are faster than they imagined and quieter than they expected. Humans rely on thought, not size." Ethan did not respond. He knew pride could be dangerous. What mattered was the next trial. The final test of the day combined everything, mental, physical, and strategic. A simulation displayed a city under attack by multiple alien forces. Civilians were trapped, energy barriers formed unpredictably, and hostile units attacked from various directions. Additionally, some elements of the simulation were designed to mislead, creating false threats and distractions. "Focus on the real problem," Velthara said quietly. "Ignore the noise, adapt." Ethan scanned the simulation. He recognized patterns in the enemy movements, noticed which dangers were false, and prioritized his actions accordingly. He deployed rescue teams, rerouted civilians, and used the environment to slow the attackers. Suddenly, a new threat appeared, a force not in the simulation's original instructions. Holographic signals indicated an ambush. Other warriors might have hesitated. Ethan did not. He adjusted his plan, created a diversion, and led civilians safely while neutralizing the fake ambush. Observers above began whispering rapidly. "How does a human think this fast?" one delegate asked. "It is unnatural." Velthara's eyes glimmered. "They survive because they adapt. They survive because they observe, calculate, and act where others hesitate." By the end of the trial, Ethan had completed every objective with minimal loss. Even the most skeptical delegates could not ignore it. Humans were no longer merely underestimated, they were formidable. After the trials, Ethan and Velthara walked through the quiet halls of the Coalition building. Many platforms remained empty as delegates withdrew to report back to their home worlds. The whispers of amazement followed them. "You see," Velthara said softly, "they are beginning to notice. They may not admit it, but they understand that humans are not simple to control or dismiss." Ethan nodded. "It feels different now. Before it was survival. Now it feels like I'm sending a message." Velthara smiled faintly. "Yes, every action you take, every trial you complete, reminds the galaxy that humans are more than appearances suggest." They reached a quiet observation deck overlooking the city below. Twin suns reflected on the towers, casting long shadows across the streets. Citizens of multiple species moved below, unaware of the events inside the hall. "Tomorrow," Velthara said, "they will attempt to undermine you. Some may try to sabotage your reputation, others may test loyalty and trust. Remember what you have learned. Think, adapt, and persevere. Humans are underestimated because the galaxy does not understand them." Ethan thought of Earth, of the countless humans who had survived challenges far greater than this. From harsh environments to wars and disasters, humans had endured and grown stronger. Here, in a galaxy that did not yet respect them, he would continue the same tradition. The night fell over the city, and Ethan rested. His mind, though tired, remained alert. He knew the next day would bring new challenges. Coalition leaders would test him in ways both visible and invisible. Meanwhile, in a darker corner of the hall, observers whispered among themselves. Some were impressed, others were anxious. If one human can achieve this, one said, what happens when many stand together? Another shook its head. We cannot ignore them, not anymore. Humans are unpredictable. Vilthara overheard this as she passed by silently. She knew the human beside her was only the beginning. His survival, adaptability, and courage were rewriting the galaxy's perception of an entire species. She looked at Ethan, who sat quietly, eyes focused on the city below. He had not noticed the whispers, but that was fine. Humans often acted without concern for appearances. They acted because it was necessary. Vilthara placed a hand on his shoulder. Rest well. Tomorrow, the real tests begin. You will face not only simulations, but attempts to disrupt your trust, to make you doubt your instincts. Do not waver. Humans endure because they trust themselves and adapt. Ethan looked up at her. I understand. Vilthara's gaze softened. Good, remember, it is not strength alone that wins battles. It is patience, calculation, and courage. That is why I claimed you. Ethan allowed a small, determined smile. Then I will not disappoint you. As they left the observation deck, the whispers continued across the Coalition Hall. Humans had become more than observers. They had become variables the galaxy could no longer ignore. And somewhere in the shadows, rival leaders whispered, plotting to test the human further, not with simulations, but with real attempts to sabotage him. Vilthara and Ethan were unaware of every plan, every hidden attempt. But one thing was certain. The galaxy had finally begun to see humans as a force capable of surviving, adapting, and thriving against impossible odds. Ethan's mind prepared for the trials ahead. The path would not be easy. Coalition leaders would attempt to break him through tests of trust, perception, and cunning. But humans had endured far greater dangers before. They survived because they never stopped moving forward. And for the first time, Ethan realized that survival alone was no longer enough. Humans had a place in this galaxy, and he would prove it. One trial, one action, one decision at a time. The day of final judgment arrived. The Galactic Coalition Hall, once filled with distant curiosity and casual doubt, now buzzed with tension. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy hovered on platforms, observing carefully. The whispers that had begun days ago had grown into cautious silence. All eyes were on one human warrior, Ethan Hale. Commander Vilthara walked beside him. Her presence was calm, yet powerful. She had claimed Ethan as her own publicly, defended him in trials, and ensured he survived the challenges that were meant to test both skill and resolve. Now she would present him formally to the council. You are ready, she said softly. Today the galaxy will finally see what humans are capable of, not as minor participants but as equals. Your victories are your voice. Ethan nodded. Humans rarely relied on recognition, but this moment felt different. It was not about fame or praise, it was about proof. Proof that humanity could stand tall among the stars, unafraid, adaptable, and intelligent. The council chamber was silent as they entered. The judges and delegates stood, their forms varied, some tall, some floating, some shifting shapes constantly. Yet all eyes focused on the human standing at the center. The lead judge spoke first. This human warrior has completed every trial, physical, mental, and strategic. Yet many doubt the significance of his actions. Explain, Commander Vilthara, why you continue to claim him. Vilthara stepped forward, her voice echoing through the chamber. I claim him not as property, but as a statement. Humanity has been underestimated for too long. Their species survives because they adapt, calculate, and persevere when all odds are against them. This human is an example of his kind, a warrior who embodies what humans can achieve. Gasps spread across the platforms. Several delegates whispered to one another, their expressions shifting from disbelief to cautious respect. The lead judge narrowed its glowing eyes. Do you suggest that a single human warrior represents the strength of an entire species? Vilthara's eyes met the judge's. No. He represents potential, a glimpse. Humans are underestimated because the galaxy does not understand them. They are clever, resourceful, and resilient. One warrior can change the perception of millions. Ethan remained silent. He had been trained to act, not to boast. Yet he could feel the weight of the moment. The trials had been dangerous, but the results now mattered beyond personal survival. Humans were no longer unknown variables. They were now recognized players in galactic affairs. the council murmured. Some were skeptical, others intrigued. One delegate, a tall crystalline being, spoke slowly. If this human is indeed capable of what Commander Velthara claims, what prevents an entire species of humans from challenging established orders? Velthara's smile was faint but unwavering. Nothing. That is why understanding, respect, and cooperation are better than underestimation and dismissal. Humans survive not because they are strong individually, but because they learn, adapt, and work together. They are an asset to any alliance. The council paused. Holographic records of the trials were displayed. Every puzzle solved, every simulation completed, every obstacle navigated by Ethan was shown in detail. The delegates watched in awe. Every success was undeniable. Humans were more than capable, they were impressive. Finally, the lead judge spoke again. Humanity has proven through this warrior that underestimation is unwise. The council recognizes this. Ethan Hale, under the supervision of Commander Velthara, is hereby acknowledged as a warrior of the Coalition. His species will be observed, studied, and treated as equals, not inferior participants. A wave of murmurs spread across the hall. Some delegates nodded in approval. Others exchanged cautious glances. The recognition was more than formal, it was transformative. Velthara turned to Ethan. You have done well, not because you sought glory, but because you acted with skill, patience, and courage. Today, the galaxy sees humans differently. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had never expected recognition. Humans were not accustomed to being celebrated among advanced species. They were known for survival, ingenuity, and endurance, but rarely for respect. This was a new experience. Delegates began approaching, asking questions. Some wanted to understand human tactics. Others wanted advice on how to adapt their own strategies to unforeseen challenges. Slowly, alliances began to form, not out of fear but respect. Humans were now valued contributors to interstellar cooperation. Velthara's gaze swept across the council chamber. This is only the beginning, she said quietly. Humans are capable of more than anyone realizes. Today, one warrior has shown the galaxy what a single human can achieve. Imagine what an entire species could do when given opportunity and trust. Ethan's mind traveled to Earth. The small blue planet, overlooked for centuries by galactic powers, had survived countless challenges. Humans had endured wars, disasters, and hostile environments. They had learned to adapt, to think differently, to persevere. Now, in the Coalition Hall, that same spirit had been recognized. As the formal proceedings ended, Ethan and Velthara stepped onto a balcony overlooking the city. The twin suns reflected off the towers, painting the streets in golden light. Life continued below, unaware of the historic recognition occurring above. Velthara placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. The galaxy has begun to see humans as they truly are. But this is only the start. You and your species will continue to prove themselves through action, courage, and persistence. Ethan nodded. I understand. Humans do not survive by relying on others' recognition. We survive by learning, adapting, and moving forward. Recognition is a reward, not a goal. Velthara smiled faintly. Good, remember that. Today you have opened doors. Tomorrow humanity will walk through them. Back inside the chamber, delegates discussed quietly. Some were impressed, some cautious. Many were eager to observe humans further, to understand how their resilience could be applied in future alliances. For the first time, humans were no longer merely participants. They were contributors, innovators, and allies. The young warrior had rewritten perception across the galaxy. As night fell, Ethan walked through the quiet corridors of the hall. His thoughts wandered not toward victory, but toward what lay ahead. The galaxy was vast. Challenges were many. But humans had endured worse than trials in simulations. They had survived on ingenuity, courage, and determination. He paused for a moment and looked at Velthara. Do you think they will ever truly understand humans? Velthara considered. Some will. Some will never believe it until they face it themselves. But one thing is certain, humans will continue to surprise them. That is the nature of your species. Ethan felt a quiet pride, not for himself, but for humanity. They had survived as individuals, as a species, and now among the stars they would survive again. The next morning, word of the recognition spread. Across the Coalition, reports reached other star systems. Humans were no longer underestimated. Ambassadors sought alliances, scholars studied human tactics, and military leaders reconsidered strategies that had assumed human weakness. Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Humans had proven their adaptability, intelligence, and courage through one warrior. The galaxy now had a choice: respect and cooperate with humans, or underestimate them at their own peril. Commander Vilthara led Ethan to the central command room where new missions were being planned. "Humanity is no longer just observed," she said. "They are partners, allies, and sometimes leaders in their own right." Ethan understood. The journey from survival to recognition had been long, but humanity was capable of more. From Earth's history to the trials in the Coalition Hall, humans had learned to endure, adapt, and thrive. And now, humanity's reputation among the stars had been rewritten. As they looked out over the city, Ethan felt the same determination he had felt in his earliest days of training. Humans did not seek power. They sought opportunity, survival, and growth. The galaxy would remember this day. One human warrior had not only survived impossible trials, but had also reminded countless species of the power of adaptability, courage, and ingenuity. Ethan smiled faintly. "We've only begun," he said. Vilthara nodded. "Yes. But the galaxy is watching, and now they will think twice before underestimating humanity." Together, they turned back toward the heart of the hall. The journey was far from over, but humanity had taken its first steps into recognition, respect, and a future among the stars. One warrior had changed perception. One species had begun to rewrite its place in the galaxy. And for Ethan, the journey and humanity's story was only beginning.